Like a backstage pass to the world of fly fishing travel, this is Waypoints, the podcast of destination angling. News and events, helpful travel tips, destination profiles, great stories, and expert advice from some of the most seasoned and experienced names in fishing travel. Waypoints is presented by Yellow Dog Fly Fishing, the industry's #1 specialty travel company and the fly shop for the world of fly fishing. Freshwater or saltwater, international or domestic, Yellow Dog has you covered for your next fishing adventure. And now your host, author, photographer, and world traveler, Jim Klug.
Welcome back to Waypoints and part 2 of my conversation with Nathaniel Linville. In part 1, we covered a lot of ground, from Nathaniel's background in competitive fishing to casting, preparation, and the way he approaches the process of becoming a better angler. Today, we pick up right where we left off and continue the conversation, including a deeper look at the new Linville Casting Academy and Nathaniel's thoughts on teaching, practice, performance, and what great anglers do differently. Here's part 2 with Nathaniel Linville. The Waypoints podcast is brought to you by Patagonia. To bring their gear to life, Patagonia is motivated by relentless curiosity and a passion for the wild. They evaluate hundreds of materials, build dozens of prototypes, and spend seasons punishing them in the world's most extreme conditions. The work is the guide, and Patagonia never tires of exploring, learning, and improving. The all-new River Salt 2 wading boot is an incredible product that solves key issues for anglers in both salt and freshwater environments. These new boots are lightweight, fast-drying, and built to perform across a full range of conditions, from mountain streams to tropical flats. Best of all, they are designed for speed, so you can slip them on and have them laced and ready to go in seconds. They combined abrasion-resistant Cordura nylon mesh uppers with a Vibram Mega Grip sole for reliable traction on wet and dry surfaces. The result is a single boot that reliably performs in any scenario. Available now through Yellow Dog Fly Fishing and Patagonia, the new River Salt 2 wading boot. A common denominator with tarpon, permit, and all key flat species is that competent casting is usually required if you want to find a higher degree of success. And I really want to talk a little bit about casting here. It's something that you have studied, you've analyzed, you've obsessed over for many years. You are launching a new project called the Linville Casting Academy.
Yeah.
In the months ahead. It's something you've been working on for a very, very long time.
I think we're 6 weeks out by my math from hopefully hard launch. Yeah.
Well, tell us more about this project and this soon to be launched, introduction of the Linville Casting Academy. I want to hear about this.
So I started teaching casting maybe 20 years ago. And I got more serious about it. There was a client of mine, a guy named Bob DeVille, and I was giving the occasional lesson. And this guy, Bob, said, "I want you to give me a lesson every week." And I was like, sure, yeah, I can do that. Meanwhile, I had no real sense of how to do that. I kind of had like a 1 hour thing built. And I was, this guy, I love the guy. He's a really great friend of mine. And he said, "I want you to teach me for an hour a week." And so I spent probably 2 or 3 years teaching Bob every week. And he let me try a whole bunch of different stuff. And I would say that experience really, sharpened the blade in terms of how to teach and what to teach. And so I've been teaching a lot, and I've never really advertised it, but it's to the point now where enough people are doing it and word of mouth has made it popular enough. And I've always had this thought of like, wouldn't it be cool to take everything that I teach and put it into like a formal system of casting? And so like most things, a friend of mine told me, I was telling him this dream that I had, like one day I'm going to do this. And he knew how much I was teaching. And he's a consultant for one of these big consulting firms. He's like, oh, I'm just going to write a little thing. And I was like, oh, that sounds funny. He gave me this piece of paper and it basically laid out what LCA would be. And I think that's even where the name came from. And I read it and I came back home and I told my wife, I was like, I have to do this now. Like I could see it for the first time. And thanks, Alex, for that, if he ever listens to this. But so that's what it is. It's basically like it's 43 different modules and some of them are long. So some of them are a really big module would be like how the rod should move. Like what should this item in space do? And a short module would be like how does your hand move on a backcast if you're presenting a backcast? Here's a way to think about it. There's misinformation modules. So there's 6 or 8 of those. Then there's practice modules. So there's a way to practice, what to practice, and then exercises that you can practice. So it's all in one place. And that's essentially what it is. It's basically a whole system of understanding casting, what to do, what not to do, and then how to improve over time.
Well, I love the fact that it spawned from I want a casting lesson once a week, because you're not going to be able to say, okay, I've got my, standard hour-long routine. If I'm going to teach someone, you can't go back the next week and say, let's do it again. Let's do it again. I mean, it has to be this constant evolution.
Yeah. And you have to by the time you get good at something, you've done it poorly a lot. And I think it was a great opportunity to make those mistakes and spend that time, kind of burn those, make enough mistakes that you could know what to leave behind and what worked and what didn't. And I think with teaching, it's so much about explaining things in 4 or 5 different ways. And you can see the look on someone's face when you're explaining it and they don't get it. You try something else, and all of a sudden you see the light bulb go off and they go, and it's one of the best feelings as an instructor where you watch someone, you're like, they just got it. And that's honestly like one of my favorite moments is you can see when someone gets it and they reach out their hand, you're showing them something with the rod and they reach out their hand and they're like, give me that. I know what you're saying. I get what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's such a big thing. A lot of people practice stuff. They don't really know what they're kind of going through emotion. They're imitating something, but they don't really understand in totality what they're trying to do. And it's what makes, like when you hand a rod to a naturally talented caster, the only explanation is they just know what they're supposed to do. And they get in an hour, they get good.
I had an experience years ago with the quarterback, Drew Brees.
Okay.
And we went out with he and his family, and he brought all his kids. He wanted them all to catch fish. And so we went down to a neat property, and the kids did. And he didn't pick up rod. I mean, he was kind of herding children and running around and competing with each other. And finally, the kids ran off, to go have lunch or whatever. And Drew said, I'd like to try this.
Sure.
And he had been listening for about an hour at that point of some of the casting instruction. And he picked up the rod, and I think we said a couple words to him. He's like, all right, let me give it a try. And he picked it up, and it was amazing. And granted, guys, an ultra high level athlete.
Yeah.
But just what he was able to watch and process in that hour. And the second he picked it up and, just threw an absolute laser beam.
I've seen one other person like that. My friend Michael Hetzel, first lesson I ever gave him. And this was August of 2010. And he shows up, he's wearing a tank top. Like he basically, he's in an argument with his wife. And he's like, yeah, we just quit smoking. I'm like, oh. And he's like, yeah, we're pissed off. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be like, what a terrible setup. So I go through the thing and I'm like, and he's like, yeah, give me the rod. And on my life, I watched the guy throw an 80-foot cast. Right. And I was like, have you ever done this before? And he goes, no. And like, to this day, he is the most naturally talented person I've ever seen. He just understood what he was supposed to be doing. He got how he was supposed to feed some line out, when to hold it. He just understood some basics of the system. And it was a great lesson for me as a teacher because, like, I believe that if anyone understood what granted, natural physical capability does factor in, but man, software is so much more important than hardware. It really is. I mean, sure, for a person who has a longer reach, they can throw farther, but I would give a rod to someone who's 5 feet tall, who really knew what they were doing, and bet against a guy who was 6'5" every day of the week if that person who had a few inches shorter, stroke length just understood what they were supposed to be doing, for sure.
So with the new Linville Casting Academy, the LCA modules.
Yeah.
How are people going to be able to access this
So,
and utilize this?
Yeah. So there's a subscription service, and basically we're running through. There's a couple of different websites that do this. Kajabi is one of them. Uscreen is the one that I think we're going to go with. I'm not really sure at this point, but basically it's going to be like a Netflix style library. So you go in there, and there's, here some good examples would be casting with a right hand crosswind, casting with a left hand crosswind, casting with into the wind, and casting with a tailing wind. Those are 4 related but different modules. And so those will be, you can search wind, and those would all show up. Right now we've got it organized by large modules that are sort of big ticket things like, 15 to 25 minute long explanations and illustrations of this stuff. And then there's maybe 25, shorter modules that are just little quick things like if you want to throw a back cast, here's how your hand moves, or how your hand should track on your forward cast, what your body position should be like. And those are shorter. So the idea is that you can click through the stuff and you'll see the title of the module and you'll say, well, that's something I've been interested in. So it lets people kind of enter the thing where they want. I don't like the idea of like a 3-hour movie that you have to watch, but I do like the idea of having 3 hours worth of content that if you purchase this thing, you have a lot of available content there that you can watch and not just, go through and be like, well, that's it.
But in digestible segments.
Exactly. And you can sit there and say, well, I'm going to spend 20 minutes. I'm going to watch this thing. And okay, well, that helps. I understand that. And then it gives you a chance to come back, and maybe you're on a trip and you can troubleshoot. I was dealing with the right-hand crosswind. I get asked that question all the time. How do I deal with this? What do I do? And you can watch that little piece. It's maybe 5 minutes long. So it gives you some like really basic stuff to think about and to work on when you're dealing with that scenario.
Well, one thing you and I have talked a lot about in the past, and I know this had to be a factor leading up to this idea of saying, okay, I'm actually going to make this happen. I'm going to create this Casting Academy format. Today is more information out there than ever before, whether it's on, how to catch fish, how to travel, certainly how to cast. There's tons of stuff on YouTube, you can find anything you want on the internet. A lot of it is really bad. And I'm not just talking about the quality of the content. It's the information that's being put out there is just incorrect.
Yeah, big time. I mean, and that's, I've made a fair amount of money over the years unwinding some of those misconceptions from students. And it's, some of the stuff it's pretty amazing when you think about it, how far along those ideas have made it, that no one's really sort of interrogated them yet. And yeah, that's a big part. So there's misinformation modules. That's a big section in there. I think there's 8 or 10 common misconceptions. And again, the idea with talking about misconceptions, it's easy for me and we actually had to reshoot a few of the modules because Cody, who works for me, was like, you don't want it to sound like a diss track. And I think that's really important. But I do, it's so hard for me to talk about this stuff without getting kind of riled up. And of course, the guy who's videoing he loves that, right? He's like, I love you being edgy. And I'm like, oh, it's not the look I'm going for, but.
It's the airing of the grievances.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm like, because it's so hard. Even now talking about it, I'm like, wait. But it is funny, like the amount of misinformation and yeah, that stuff it's accessible. You can hear something that like for instance, like if you throw a sidearm, you beat the wind. It's not true. There is just as much wind down low as there is high. And there's reasons for why we believe that, but it's nice to have someone just break it down and be like, here's why that's a thing. Here's why people believe that. Here's why it's not true. Here's something you can do instead. And here's a way you can practice that. Like, wouldn't that be nice to just have those questions answered in a reasonable, straightforward way, and then be able to ask yourself, because I ask my students this all the time, like, does that make sense? It's my favorite question to ask. And if you can answer yes to, and I tell this to my students because they're like, hey, this is different than what I've heard. And I'm like, yeah, totally. And I'm biased. Of course I believe my own bullshit, but just ask yourself, the only question that I ask is, when you're thinking about this stuff and you're comparing what I'm teaching you to someone else, just say, does it make sense? And if the answer is yes, and it's simple, then go with whatever makes sense and is simple and you get. And I think that something has to be able to pass that basic test. If it can't, then good luck.
How did you guys go about shooting these modules? Who did you do it with?
Yeah. So a guy,
it's been a big project.
Yeah, it's been the whole, why I decided to do it in the middle of tarpon season, I have no idea. But so the first thing we did was we got a big backdrop. I mean, in a perfect world, we're doing it all indoors with a sort of an endless black wall behind us so you can see the rod moving in a line. I'm not a big, I don't really pay a lot of attention to loops, and I don't need to see the loop traveling. There's a module about this, by the way, but I think chasing small loops is kind of pointless and dangerous. And it doesn't really give you much. But anyway, it's nice to be able to see the rod and the hand and the person moving and not have there be a bunch of stuff in the background that it blends into. So I used some of the orange lines that we used when we did the Saltwater Invitational. And I took a rod and I spray painted a rod like a light blue color so it would contrast against this black backdrop. So it's just farm shade that if you had a greenhouse or something in South Florida, you wanted to shade it, you'd buy this it's black mesh, but it's really tightly woven. So we just walked into the local baseball field and hung it up. And of course, the first day, the cops showed up. And we're like, come on. But because all the guys it's actually adjacent to the park where I teach. So we were saved by all the guys that see me teaching there constantly. And I'm always I always say hi to them and be nice. And they actually were like, no, we know him. He's okay. So we just did that. And then we shot, so that's for all the live action casting stuff. Then we shot whiteboard stuff, and forgive my handwriting. It just means that it's real. So a little whiteboard explanation of each module, where you can go through and see what the major points are. And then we also did some shooting without a full rod, with just the bottom quarter of a 4-piece rod and a reel, and against a wall in a church actually in Key West. So you can see that. So there's 3 different ways to approach each module. And I thought that was a good place to start rather than just one time. Because it is hard to film.
It's really hard to film.
It is. And you can see it on YouTube because all these guys, it's low light. They got some trees behind them and they're looking for the side light. So we did what we could. And you want it to be perfect, and I'm sure it's not, but we did our best.
I think that, this is something I'm personally so excited to see. This is something our industry really needs, not just because the amount of misinformation that's out there, but because people are hungry to learn the right way. And I think about this through the scope of destination angling, obviously, which is what we do. People want to be better prepared when they go down. They don't always have a lot of time. They don't always necessarily have the ability to hire Nathaniel Linville to come to their house once a week for a personal casting lesson. But there is definitely a lack of a great resource out there that can really help them prepare and show up ready and
I think also that for a person who is interested in collecting new information and different ways to improve, they're drawing it from so many different sources. And some of those things are in direct opposition to one another. So one person tells you this, someone else tells you that. And it's, at some point, I've had some of my students who are, like you described, they're interested and they've gotten a few lessons. And, it's a weird thing, but they'll often say okay, I had to make a choice basically of where I'm going to get information from. And having all of the information in one place, there's consistency to the approach. And that I think is really important. We talk about that in tournament fishing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It matters that you consistently execute it. And your approach might be different than mine, but getting it right, whatever you're doing, is more important than what you're doing, believe it or not. Now with casting, I think there's physics involved, but of course, that's
there are and mechanics.
Yeah.
But do you think that modern fly rods have made people better casters, or do you think they've simply gotten better at masking bad habits?
I don't think they mask. I think good equipment is good equipment. And the better the equipment, that part of the total will be better. I don't think that I always sort of am annoyed at the idea that there's lines for professionals and then rods for professionals and then the stuff for other people. Again, I really dislike the implication that most people who do this are not good. And there's only a few people that are. Like, I think good equipment is good equipment. And that's true for someone who's an intermediate caster, a beginner, or an expert. And I don't think that we should make lines for people who aren't good, because I don't think we would do that in any other sport. We don't give like a golfer, like, here's like the idiot clubs. Like that would,
I would actually need those if I played golf at all.
but I don't even think that's a thing. Like we don't give like a tennis player, like, we're going to give you a kiddie racket.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so insulting. And I think when you really drill down into this stuff, making stuff that's good has turned into making stuff that makes one job easier, but then makes something else harder. And I think that a lot of that is the way it's taught and the way we talk about it. But look, I think we live in a great time. This is as good as equipment's ever been. And it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah.
And it's great, but I don't think it's masking anything.
Right.
I think it helps. It raises all people of every ability. Good stuff does.
You talked about how you have these misinformation modules,
Yeah.
right? In LCA. What do you believe many anglers perceive as, something that is, quote, essential to great casting that you consider largely irrelevant?
Oh, a stiff wrist. You don't want a stiff wrist, and you're rotating the rod. And the other thing is the idea of like a stance. Like, this is a stance. That's not true at all. I think the sidearm like, I get asked all the time, like, about the sidearm like, you're a saltwater guy. You have a sidearm, right? No, it's that's a few that come to mind. There's more, but those are three big ones.
There are quite a few kind of confidently repeated pieces of fly casting advice. Like you were to say with the sentence that you hear all the time.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, that's just fundamentally wrong.
100% wrong.
Or if it's not wrong, it's just irrelevant.
Or keep a book against your rib cage. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to casting, and again, you're like, well, hey, buy the module. I've spent
No. I mean, there's a certain amount of this. I'm well aware that I need to sort of earn people's attention.
Yeah.
And some of this stuff is going to be available for free. Like the line slip module that I talked about with you earlier, and I talked about with Andy. Like, I do want enough to be out there for, like, I don't think that the stuff is proprietary. And to be honest, I would love a time when like this approach to casting is more broadly accepted and people are teaching it themselves. Like, I'm not trying to hoard it.
No, but I guess, it's hard to answer, in a podcast format. It's like, okay, well, here's the deal. But
Sure.
I guess one question I have is, when it comes to casting, what should anglers practice that almost no one currently practices?
Oh man, the best. I mean, well, there's so much.
I know. Exactly.
So no, okay. Well, no. I'll say
that.
I'll say two things. One is I'll give you, I think, what you're asking for, which is what is an actual thing they can do to improve their ability, and that would be practice moving your hand in a straight line without attachment to your body position. So we're sitting in a room here. Let's say you're brushing your teeth, right? And you have your toothbrush, or your hand comes up in space. Pick two things, maybe in front of you and behind you. So in a mirror, if you're in the bathroom, you've got the reflection of something in your visual field. So just start moving your hand towards the mirror and away from the mirror in a straight line. And then just rotate your body around clockwise or counterclockwise and keep your hand moving in that straight line. And then rotate. I'm on a swiveling chair, by the way, so you can hear me going farther.
Spinning in circles right now.
No, but I mean, and just practice independence of your body position and your hand. So a basic thing, and this is one of the practice modules, is just bring your hand up in space, leave your hand in that location, and move your body left and right, forward and back, but leave your hand there. And that's something that most people, when they move their body, their hand follows. The problem is it's like a compass. It's moving in a line. So if you can just keep your hand in space and just move your body around without moving your hand, and one way to practice it is just hold something, just put your hand on the wall and just kind of move around it, or hold like whatever, just keep it in space. If you can have that independence, that's what good casting is predicated on. And then you don't need to have a body position. because that's what your hand needs to do. And your body just needs to fit around that. The other thing, the sort of less specific answer to that, is when you practice, have a measurable way to practice. Have a set thing that you're doing a set number of times. And don't do it any more than that. Say, I'm going to do 10 reps of this. And give yourself a check mark if you get it right. And don't give yourself a check mark if you get it wrong. So the first time you do an exercise, you might only get it right 2 times. That tells you something. It tells you you're not very good at it. But it also gives you a starting point that you can move forward from. So practicing that way, and this is a big, sort of pillar of LCA, is practicing in the right way that's more efficient. Rather than, because I ask people, they'll say, oh, I practice all the time. I'm like, oh, cool. What do you practice? And inevitably, the answer I get is not what, but they'll tell me where. It's a weird thing. I practice all the time. Oh, cool. What do you practice? Well, I got this park next to my house. I mean, try it sometime. I'm telling you, like before this comes out, try it with someone. The next person that tells you that, I almost guarantee you that's what they'll say. And it's not that they're not answering your question. They just they don't really know what they're practicing, because no one's go to the gym. What did you do? Oh, I did some bicep curls. Like you know what you're doing. Imagine just going to the gym. Like, what did you do? Well, it's right by my house. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Is there a smoothie shop next door? Yeah, they got this great smoothie. What'd you do? Well, I just go in there and, it's really good. All
right. Well, before we move on from this, where are people going to be able to access the Linville Casting Academy?
So we're launching a social media. I don't know what it's going to be called yet. It'll be probably something like Linville Casting Academy on Instagram. That's happening next month. The website is linvillecasting.com. We're in the process of getting that website up and running. I wish that the timeline of all this stuff was a little more like lined up. This may come out before that's live, but we're going to be live in a few weeks with the website. And there's going to be 2 free modules on there. One is, how to get line out quickly, which is basically line slip. And then the other one is how to learn to throw a back cast, which are 2 really big ticket, important modules. And those are both going to be available there for free if people want to sort of check it out and see if it's something they'd want to, subscribe to.
Well, that's exciting. Congratulations on getting that put together. So you've spent your career around some of the best anglers in the world, whether it's fishing with them, competing against them. You've been exposed to a lot of great fishermen. When you strip away all the differences in personalities, equipment, what the fisheries might deliver on a given day, what habits do elite anglers almost always share? And we talked a little bit about this with staying calm under pressure, but general habits, whether it's preparation, practice, mental mindset.
I think each one's probably different. I mean, they're all, we're talking about a very sort of varied group of people. They're all different. They're all, type A, like they're all super articulate, smart. In general, that's true for most pursuits. But the one thing I think that they all have in common is that they're all really interested in stuff. They're interested in flies. They're interested in people. They're sort of outward looking. And then so that's in terms of what they're interested in. And then when things don't go their way, they never blame someone else. It's always themselves. There can be terrible weather and they get like 2 shots and they're like, I just couldn't get it done. And you're like, dude, that's like, you guys just had the, short end of the stick. And they're like, yeah, but I should. And they're going back and sort of like, agonizing about something they could have done differently. And they're all that way and super interested in stuff.
Inherent curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so who's the most technically impressive angler you've ever shared a boat with? And what about that person did they do differently that kind of sets them apart? Can you think of one person?
Yeah, Dave DeLue.
Dave DeLue.
Yeah, and Dave is hyper technical. Like when you talk about like a technical angler, like that's who you're talking about. he is just fastidious and like almost has this like nervous energy to him. And Dave basically, there's a lot of discussion about where the worm fly came from. And there were other people that were throwing a worm fly. There were other people that were doing it around the same time, but Dave DeLue and Scott Collins were the ones who refined it into what it is today, or very close to it, from a much more broad and much less focused thing. And there's a few people who are like, but I wrote an article about, shut the fuck up. Like, those guys took something that maybe some people were kind of sniffing around, and they like brought it home and put a collar on it. And that's a pretty distinct difference, and he is just like, he sees a string of fish and he's drawing on thousands of experiences with that particular thing. And he's just good. He's efficient in his movement, and he's really good, period. I mean, he's just phenomenal.
Well, there's definitely a difference between being interested in something and being obsessed with it. And we've talked a little bit about that. And from my experience, I don't know if I'd say the best anglers are the most consistent or highest performing anglers. Obsession all seems to, that's kind of in there in the conversation. They have a certain degree of obsession. And, in your case, Nathaniel, you've spent years, as we talked about, weighing your flies, measuring leaders, you've designed your own fly line tapers. Obviously you analyze casting, study fish behavior. You meticulously optimize your equipment, and you control what you can control at all times and on all levels. It's one of the reasons you've been so successful as a tournament angler in pursuit of records. Where does that drive come from? Have you always been wired that way?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I remember really distinctly when I was hearing my mom talk about someone who was good at fishing. And I like had this idea that fishing was really cool, but then the introduction of the concept that someone could be good at it, and that was to be celebrated. It was like the collision of like interest and aspiration. And I was like interested in fishing, and then like, holy shit, like you can actually get, something from being good at it. And so I think that was like by the way, I think that's kind of hardwired into us. Like, as animals, if you can fish, you can provide for your family and theoretically, like, have more children or whatever. But so I think and you see it all the time, right? Guys who like have a couple of cocktails and they're like, I've caught more Atlantic salmon than you could even realize. And you're like, oh, cool. Like, but it's such a part of like fishing, I think.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, I mean, you talk about optimize your equipment, the control factors. Yeah, there's so many variables you can't control as an angler, obviously, including weather, wind, fish behavior, the number of shots that present themselves. How do you decide as part of kind of your preparation process and then the actual execution when you're on the water, whether it's just, out practicing, fishing with buddies, participating in a tournament? How do you decide which details are worth focusing on and which variables make the biggest difference in actually converting more shots into catching?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's simple. It's like, if it has to do with where the fly goes or what I do, then it's on me. And if not, then like, I don't ever worry about where we're going. I fished with guides in the Keys since I moved there, and it's up to them. And when I've made fished with guides who are less experienced than other guides, like sometimes I do know like where the fishing might be better, but I would never say anything because it's not on me. I have no interest in that. So I really try to stay in my own lane, which I think is, you can control a lot if you focus on the casting and the presentation, what you do, and then just let someone else do their job. I mean, you run a business, right? Like if you went up there right now and just started like overseeing the person who's like stocking the flies, guaranteed it would take longer, be less efficient.
Oh, if I'm involved with stocking flies, I promise you.
No, for sure. Yeah. But there's people like, you know where you fit in, right? And so for me as an angler, like I know where I fit in, and I know that I'm not a guide and I don't aspire to be a guide. Being a guide is a profession that I hold in the highest regard, but I am not a guide. And I don't think I'd be a very good one. Like, and when I say that to people, they're like, "Oh, come on, you know how to," like, yeah, I'm good at teaching casting. I'm good at fishing. But if I was a guide, I'd be really salty. And I don't think I just can't imagine doing that job well.
Yeah.
So far outside of my ability, I think.
Well, we've talked about this and kind of come at it from a different approach. Let me throw this scenario out there for our listeners. All right. And we'll break it down this way. Let's imagine there's two anglers standing side by side, right? Fishing with the same guide, same boat, same conditions, same opportunities, like everything's equal.
Oh yeah.
At the end of the week, okay, one angler catches 2 or 3 times as many fish as the other. Everything else is the same.
Yeah.
What happened?
That's just consistency. It's exactly what I said before. You know, if you're looking at the statistical expression of a long 1,000-shot opportunity, and one guy gets it right, 968, the other guy gets it right, 309, and that's 3-1. And it's just, or whatever, 3 point, small change to 1. And that's it. There is no, like, none of those successful opportunities were out of reach of the person who caught a third as many fish. But, you know, and look, it's the sum of everything leads to that, right? Like one guy probably went to bed a little bit earlier, had one fewer stiff cocktail at the end of fishing, had a little bit of a smaller chip on his shoulder. Like how many times have you seen someone who like decides that the world's out to get them and like, oh, I keep getting, it keeps happening to me. And then it sure enough keeps happening, you know? Again, it's being, I don't know. I think that's like, you know, there's some life lesson in there maybe, but I don't think that most people could tell the difference between those people, but you do see it in what you're talking, in like the statistics of a week of fishing.
Yeah.
And I just think they're a little bit more relaxed, a little bit calmer. And sometimes the solution is just that, like just fucking chill out.
Yeah.
Go slow. Again, with the slow.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah. So along with consistency, how much of a factor is confidence? And where does confidence actually come from? I mean, is it something you build through?
Confidence comes from knowing what you can do. And so a good example is my wife. So I am a better caster than my wife. I love my wife and she is my star pupil. I taught her from nothing. And she's my little like favorite thing to refer to when people are like, never teach your old lady to fly cast. And I'm like, no, like she is incredible, but I have more experience. I've been doing it a lot longer and I'm better. But she can outfish me in a competitive environment because she knows what she can do and she doesn't ask herself to do things that she can't do. So here comes a fish and it's upwind. I can make that cast at 70 feet. She can make that cast at 55 feet, which is a not insignificant delta in our ability, but it doesn't matter. If I try to make it at 90 feet, I'm going to come up short and be frustrated and be stripping as the fish is coming and screw it up. If she tries to make the shot at 70 feet, she's going to do the same thing. She's going to come up short. She's going to strip in the line. The fish is then going to be closer. If we just wait, if you understand what you can do and you're honest about it, you don't ask yourself to do something that you can't do, then you build confidence over time. And, you know, no matter how good you are, if you try to do something you can't do, you're going to eat away at your confidence. I see this all the time when people are learning how to like double haul and they're getting line out, Everything's working, everything's great. And then all of a sudden they start to fall apart and they're like, it's terrible. Like, yeah, you were trying to hold up like 70 feet of line. What are you going to do with that? Like you can always go past what you can do and then feel like shit, but just know what you can do. Think about it critically for just 2 seconds. Like that feels really good. And then let one go. And that's how you can train confidence into yourself by just understanding some of the basic parts of like casting and what you're trying to do. I have a lot of thoughts on that topic. And I think it's just that, just understand what you can do and do that. Yeah. And that's part of what makes good anglers. It's like, who cares if you feed a fish at 70 feet or you feed a fish at 50 feet, there's no difference. You still hook the fish. But it's when you try to get when you get frustrated and you try to push yourself beyond what you think you can do. That's like number one. When you're casting into the wind, let the fish get closer. Just give yourself a break. You know, yeah. That'll set you up for success, and which breeds confidence. So, anyway,
I love that theme though, because I think it's not talked about enough in fishing.
Yeah.
I know consistency, confidence, and confidence comes through knowing what you're capable of doing.
Yeah, knowing
your
how,
limits.
like, how much of a risk you're taking. Like, I get asked all the time, like, people assume that I can just do everything with a right-hand crosswind. And that's just not the case. I'm like, people are like, well, how do you cast with a right-hand crosswind? Like, you do avoid it is the first thing. And understand that what you're doing is really, really difficult. Like, it's sort of like in golf, you know, like how do you hit a shot like out of a really shitty lie, like off the fairway? Well, the first thing you do is you try to avoid doing that. You try to make that not happen. And then you also adjust your expectations. You don't walk into that shot thinking like, oh, this is perfect. You walk into that shot being like, this is challenging. I'm going to try to get myself out of this bind that I found myself in. And if you look at it that way, you're not going to eat up your own confidence, because you can look, that'll kill you. Like, confidence will just be destroyed by the end of a trip. I'm sure some of your customers have experienced that. Unfortunately, we all have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell me, in your opinion, most overrated piece of fly fishing gear in this whole equation when it comes to, fishing occasionally or going on a destination trip.
Fly line dressing.
Fly line dressing.
Yeah. Overrated. So when you buy a line, it has a certain like coefficient of friction. Like it's a certain level of slick. And throughout the life of that line, that level of slick will slowly deteriorate. So it's almost immeasurable, but it does kind of drop slowly over time. And if you get line dressing, you will return it to like an unnatural level of slickness. But then in an hour or two, it drops back down. So what you're ending up doing is you're changing like the friction, like the coefficient of friction on that line by a lot throughout the day. And that's worse than just sticking with what you've got and getting used to it. So when you're dressing fly lines, you either have to dress them constantly and all the time, or you have to not. I think you just shouldn't dress them at all. Personally, I never dress any fly lines that I have.
Which is not to say you don't clean fly lines, because there's a difference, right? I mean, you get a line that's, gunky or dirty or whatever.
If a line's got stuff on it but like fishing,
yeah,
I don't clean my lines.
Ever?
No.
Nope. You just let them live their life, and when the life is over, you replace it.
Yeah, and so, a counter to that would be like, well, you get free fly lines and you fish all the time, but it's like, yeah, but I don't, I'll probably change like fly lines I have like 2 11-weight rods that I fish really in rotation during tarpon season. I'll probably change those lines 2 times, maybe, if that, 1 or 2
throughout the season.
Usually before a tournament, I'll change them. But I think that stuff is just kind of overrated. But again, shooting from the hip here.
No, it's good. I love this. How about most underrated piece of fly fishing gear?
A good knot.
Ooh, good knot.
A good knot, for sure.
So it's not just a piece of gear. It's an underrated skill.
Yeah, well, it's just I'm being a little bit pat. But yeah, I think it's if you can tie a leader that preserves all of the strength of the tippet or most of it, that is just a very different experience than, and honestly, the only way to do it is break them, But I think people don't understand how impactful that is.
Back in the beginning of our conversation, the very beginning of the initial episode, you talked about how permit fishing has evolved so much over the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
The number of people focusing on it, our understanding of the species, the evolution of gear and fly patterns.
Well, it seems also that the number of permit on the globe has multiplied. Now there's many more permit than ever there were, which is another interesting thing. But anyway.
Well, on that same note, how do you think saltwater angling in general has changed over the last decade? Do you think it's changing for the better? Are we evolving? Are we, understanding more about our saltwater environments and therefore finding more success?
I don't know, really. I kind of get exposed to like the Florida Keys scene constantly, and then everywhere else, passes over a lot of ground before it gets to me. I do think that there has been some of the ability to like rig a leader, like an IGFA leader, has been lost And I think when I say lost, I mean sort of given away, which is more tragic in a way. I'm not I'm not super diehard. Like if you're not fishing IGFA, you're not fucking fly fishing. I don't believe that at all. I grew up fishing and just wanted to catch something and didn't care at all about what I was fishing, but no one also really walked me through it. And I think what I see in the sport a lot, particularly with big fish, like the marlin fishing that's being done, it's just sort of a loss of like what we're doing in the sport. Where, I mean, I've seen guys like the guide hand lining the fish. And, frankly, I think that's just sad. I think it's, if you pay a lot of money to go on a trip to catch a fish and, you end up with a guide fighting the fish on the leader for the last, 10 feet or 10 minutes, and the thing slips down to the fly line, the guy's pulling up the fly line. Like, I just wonder at a certain point, like, what are we doing here? And what's so scary about breaking off a beautiful fish and saying, God, it was amazing. I watched the thing eat and I need to get a little bit better. Like there's no crime in that as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And we talk about that all the time. It's like, oh, and by the way, it's okay when the fish wins sometimes.
100%. Yeah. And again, we're fly fishing. Like we've already made a huge concession about how many fish we're going to catch because we want to wave it around. We want the weight of the line to carry the fly, all that stuff. And it's like then at the last minute you give it away. It's just like, all right, fine, whatever, do it.
Well, in the conversation of destination angling, Nathaniel, and I would include your fly shop, your location in that realm of destination angling.
Sure.
When people are coming down to the Keys, have you found that over the, let's say last 5 years, last 10 years, whatever, are anglers arriving more informed than ever or more confused than ever, just by the sheer amount of information that's out there and being pumped out there? I mean, what are you seeing?
I see, because people come down to, I think we have a reputation as a shop that is a little more like technically inclined. So I think you're seeing more people who are that way, maybe being attracted to us as a shop. So I think people are showing up more informed. Personally, I think, look, there's more misinformation out there than ever before, but I feel like, I'd say like we're on an island, like we're literally on an island, but I think we're kind of insulated from that in Key West, just because we're like, the angling company in Key West, and that's sort of the ground zero for tournaments and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, continuing the theme of destination angling, obviously, fishing with guides is such a key part of it.
Yeah.
You talked about a few minutes ago how like you would never be a guide. It's not your thing.
Correct.
But you've fished with great guides all over the place. And your relationship with Keys guide Ian Slater, has literally become the stuff of legend over the years. The relationship that the two of you guys have, the success that you've consistently found on the water. What makes that such a great connection? And I guess, going back for the importance of having a good relationship with a guide in general. Maybe you're fishing with that guide for a week.
Well, so I've been really lucky. I spoke at one of Steve Huff's inductions, and he gets inducted a lot. And it's great because he genuinely doesn't understand why. So I have to explain it to him, which is like a fun moment. But I was talking about his career and how he has really molded himself around. He molded himself around my dream of catching the 6-pound tarpon record. But it wasn't just me. He molded himself around Sandy Moret's dream of winning the Gold Cup. He molded himself around Lenny Berg's dream of being a tournament-winning angler. He molded himself around Tom Evans' dream of being like, this towering talent in line class fishing for tarpon records. And he molded himself around Del Brown and his pursuit of permit. And so this guy has the ability to find what someone else is doing and just fit in around that. And look, I've been really lucky in my career as an angler. I've had my relationship with Steve, which was focused on that tarpon record, my relationship with John O'Hearn, which was focused on the permit records. And we the 2-pound permit record, and then the tournaments we were fishing. And then with Ian, it's been mostly tarpon fishing, although at the moment it sounds like what we're going to go down in history for is the March Murky this year. But I've been the beneficiary of these really important relationships, and they're all basically similar in that you're working together as a team. And when you're on a team, when I'm fishing with a guide somewhere else. Like I really do look at it that way. You get on someone's boat and I'm like, okay, where do I fit in? And it's not because I don't know that I'm a client or a customer or I'm not paying money to be there. It's just because I know that will bring us the highest level of success personally and on the water. And I think too many people view a guide as the sort of expendable thing. And I really think that if you get on someone's boat and you're like, man, I'm really happy to be here and I'm excited, and you show them that you're like a part of the team with them, that it's good for the personal relationship, but it's also good for your fishing, because those people, you'll work harder, they'll work harder. And that's, I think that's a really big thing in terms of why people are like able to have better experiences.
And even if you're fishing with that guide for, again, 3 or 4 days.
Or you're changing, still, if I'm fishing with a guide, I want them to feel comfortable. I'm trying to like generate some interest from them, and if there's not any, I want to make it. But I don't consider it their job to just like take me fishing and bring me to the good spots. I mean, there's so much more to it than that.
Well, destination angling, which is something we obviously talk about on this podcast a lot, that we're focused on, is a huge component of our sport these days. We know that. It's something that continues to grow. I mean, sure. I really do think that every year the world becomes a little bit smaller and some of these destinations become more attainable and possible for more anglers. Do you think destination fly fishing in general has become too focused on results? Is that something you see?
Yeah. I mean, I think fishing in general has become too focused on results. And I mean, I think we've sort of talked about the various reasons for that and the concessions that people are willing to make about that. And, I think that we should endeavor to point out that it's difficult and be okay with failure. But again, part of me is like, what did you expect? I mean, if it's worth wanting to do, then surely it has to be so difficult that you might not. Otherwise, like you're just assigning value to something that you already have, in which case just go home and stare at the wall and be like, thank God it's my wall. Like, what are we doing? I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. I mean, it's never easy. It shouldn't be easy.
No. And that's like, it's so inbuilt that it's sort of like, when guys were like, well, and I used to be like that when I was younger. I'd go on a trip and I'd feel like I was entitled to something, but that was a product of, being a fucking brat, not being an adult. And it's funny when you see like a 70-year-old like that. I'm sure you see it a lot. But, my advice is get over it. Then just, if you want to do it, like accept that it's hard. And when it's difficult, like celebrate that. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. We talk a lot about that with destination trips, and it's a theme that I've, tried to put out there to as many people as possible. It's like, okay, if this is going to become your thing and you're going to be a traveling angler, and you're going to go after these far off destinations, chase new and exotic species, there's almost a formula that you have to wrap your head around. And that is that, say, okay, I'm going to go on 10 trips in the next 2 years. I have to think that, 2 or 3 of those trips are probably going to be home runs. 2 or 3 of those trips are probably going to be super difficult, maybe tough weather, blown out conditions, just not going to work out your way. And the others are going to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that, or else this really isn't your thing. You should probably stick to something where you can control the variables a lot more than you can on the water, and, certainly with fly fishing.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's, to me, that stuff is like, I mean, I do understand the idea that you want to have success. Like we all do. But again, if it's, the extent to which it's worth having is the extent to which it's difficult to attain. And so the difficulty should indicate that it's good, that you're like, I don't know. I always tell people, like, if it was easy, it'd be boring. And that is so true, because no one's booking like a week to go catch a gray snapper on fly in Key West, because they're everywhere. I mean, and that's, that's part of why like Jack Crevalle don't have this, like, or bluefish. Like no one's like booking a week-long bluefish, chata in Montauk. But honestly, like it'd be pretty cool if you did. So if you're on the fence, go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Check it out. Well, Your personal story, Nathaniel, is one of overcoming adversity, rebuilding your life. You've covered this topic in detail in other podcasts.
Sure.
You've done other conversations. I'm not going to ask you to go deep on that subject or talk about the things that others have asked you about in previous interviews. But on that note, and kind of looking back on your own life's journey, specific to fly fishing, what do you think it is that this sport gave you that you needed most, whether it was at a young age or at a challenging time in your life? What is it about fly fishing that made it become your thing?
I think it was something that I could do as much of as I could possibly do, and it was never bad for me, which is more than I can say for some things I did a lot of. But look, I also think that in the Keys, there was a social side to it. And I appreciated that. Like when I got clean, I was not like, Nathaniel Linville today. I mean, there wasn't like a reputation that I had that I'd lost. I had no reputation to start. And so it really gave me like some accountability and showing up and like being in the tournaments or being involved with conservation. Like it was a whole scene. And I think that the way I looked at it back then was there's an existing thing that's happening. There's an existing sport. There's an existing infrastructure. There's an existing social, not hierarchy, but there's a social community. Exactly. And my question is, how do I fit into that thing rather than how do I bend that thing into what I want? So it was really trying to fit into an existing thing. And that was a good habit to be in. Like, let me figure out where I fit in, not try to change anything, but just, figure out where the traffic's moving and merge, rather than just, start flicking people off and yelling because they're driving too fast.
Well, you've had some challenges. You've gone for some dark places, and now today you've become one of the most respected professionals in the industry. And I think, anyone that follows the saltwater game, anyone that knows the fly fishing world would agree with that. Do you think in your case, and you've been described as, uber focused, obsessive. I mean, you put a lot into your craft, I guess is the way I would say it. But do you think the pursuit of mastery can help save people?
Yeah, I think no matter what, if you're struggling with addiction, you get clean and you stay clean, I think you have to find somewhere to go. You have to find something to do. And you will grab onto something. I think your grip strength is more important than what you end up grabbing. I don't think that, for me, it was fly fishing. That was what was in front of me. It could have been needlepoint. It could have been anything, I think. I don't think there was anything inherent about fishing. I think the idea that, look, if you're drowning, you hold on to anything, even if it hurts at first, because you don't want to go there. And I think for, in my case, what I would recommend to people is like, just do something and do it as hard as you can. I mean, don't do drugs, right? Like if you're trying to get, if you're an alcoholic, don't start smoking crack. That's good advice. But assuming that there's a base level of understanding about what's good and what's not, find something to grab onto and grab the fuck a hold to it and hang on and figure out what's going on and get into that thing. And I think no matter what it is, it's less important than just that practice. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what does success mean to you today compared to 15 years ago? If I asked you for the definition of success and I asked Nathaniel Linville at this point in your life today versus what your answer would have been 15 years ago.
It's a difficult question because it's one that I actually think about. It's sort of like relevant to my life right now, because when I got clean, I wanted so desperately to perform at a high level in fly fishing. It was so important to me to overcome the deficit that I'd created for myself through my own behavior and poor decisions. But to win these tournaments and to catch world records and to sort of to earn, respect. And I think a big part of LCA is sort of maybe a future off-ramp from that really hard focus on, inward facing performance and trying to sort of look to where I fit into this sport. To me, it's obvious that I'm going to be in this sport till I die. And that this sport is somewhere, for whatever reason, this is my lot in life, is to be in saltwater fly fishing. Although here I am trout fishing, so maybe we'll put a little freshwater.
Yeah, welcome to Montana.
But I think that's like a big part of LCA, which is I would love to like leave some casting, like I would have loved to change the conversation about casting, and I would love some of the stuff to make it into the mainstream way that casting is taught. Because honestly, like continuing to work that hard in the tournaments forever is pretty daunting. And frankly, like I don't want to anymore. Like I love working hard for like tarpon season leading up to the Gold Cup. It's still very much on my mind. And that tournament particularly is such a big one. But the rest of it, like, I think that's a natural transition toward wanting to be a little more. And plus, dude, like you see these younger guys coming up. Like I walked into your shop earlier and I met about 4 guys that I know, at least one of them, if I was fishing tournaments and they were in that space, within 10 years, I'd be terrified of them. Guaranteed. I don't know which one it is. Like they have to figure out, there's a lot of, the time between now and then, but there's guys like that in the Keys, younger people who are coming into the sport. And I think it's important to welcome them rather than just try to and I think it's one of the things about the industry you saw back in the 70s and 80s. There were a few guys that carved out some space for themselves and they defended it.
Yeah.
Like they really kept anyone else from doing that. And that's something that I really disagree with and I don't want to do myself. So I think LCA is the next sort of chapter for me.
Well, I think there's probably quite a few tournament anglers out there when they hear about your next chapter, they're thinking to themselves, yes, please, let's go ahead and have that happen. We're ready.
I think so. I think the guys who are at that top level don't think about me at all.
I bet they do. I bet they do. Well, last question I have for you.
Yeah.
When your fishing days are over and you said, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. This is my path. This is what I was put here to do. But when they're over, and I hope that's a very long time from now, what do you hope people remember about the way you approached this sport?
I mean, the only thing that I care about is that people said that I was like respectful and nice to them. I've had so many opportunities in the sport to meet people who I looked up to. And I remember the ones who were cool and I remember the ones that weren't. And that's the only thing that because all the statistics about the score, it's funny, you write a bio for yourself, which I've been doing for LCA. It's the highest scoring team ever, blah, 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 all this shit. And it's it's cool, but no one really cares. If you change those statistics a little bit and you were the second highest most, people would read that and it would have the same effect that it is intended, which is to qualify you, right? But I would love, when we were down in Belize, right? And we were shooting this really extensive project of trying all these rods, which was super cool. The people or the moments that I really related to the most were we were out there and I'm looking at the young guys that you've got working for you and they're out on the dock trying to catch anything. They're trying to catch a tarpon, there's a shark there. And I loved going down there and seeing what they were doing because that I feel like I can relate to, being the casting talent for this, that's not something that I identify with, but a couple of dudes out on a dock at night who are excited to be there and are just fishing. I hope that those guys are yeah, he was cool and he was one of us, not remembered as something, some version of myself. I just hope that the guys who were in the trenches working behind the counter are yeah, he was cool and we had a good time and he's a good guy. That's all I really care about. The rest of it, who gives a shit? I mean, they're medal fish and one of them says grand champion, one of them says runner up. Who gives a shit? So that's an honest answer. And I've thought about that's all. I just want to be just want to be one of the guys. That's it.
I love it.
Cool.
Well, Nathaniel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great conversation. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should talk at some point about doing a trip together.
We will.
Cool.
Stay tuned. If you're listening to this, stay tuned. There's some great things coming from Linville Casting Academy. on some things we're very excited about with Yellow Dog on some potential affiliations. And this is going to be a great project. Congratulations on that.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me.
All
I
right.
appreciate the time.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Waypoints. If you're dreaming about your next fly fishing adventure, be sure to visit yellowdogflyfishing.com. It's the place to explore destinations, research trips, source the right gear and flies, and stay up to date on everything happening in the world of destination angling. Until next time, keep fishing, keep traveling, and remember, no one ever regretted a life of adventure.
This has been another episode of Waypoints, the podcast of fly fishing travel and adventure angling. Waypoints is produced by Brian Gregson and written by Jim Klug. Music is written and provided by bluegrass legend Woody Platt. Audio engineered by Sean McCormick. Visit yellowdogflyfishing.com for more location profiles, destination information, travel news, and the industry's best selection of flies and equipment for destination angling.